We discussed about stereotype annotations, right? So, yeah. So, during class creation itself, during writing our class itself, we used to put these annotations on top of our class so that your class will be categorized based on the annotation that you have given. Usually, we used to register our classes into XML file. Here, during using stereotype annotations, instead we configure our classes as a beans here. Spring will go to each package and it will identify the classes which all mentioned with the stereotypes, okay? Which all mentioned with stereotypes, and it will register that objects. It will create the objects and it will keep that object references with IOs. So as usual, how you are doing a bean tag here in XML file, similar way you can use at the rate bean annotation also for your configurations. For all your MVC classes, whichever you wanted to implement, controller, service, DAOs, or any utility classes, that all can be registered via the stereotypes. Apart from this, if there are any configurations objects if you want to create, which are from third party, as you cannot able to mention your annotation on third party classes. Let's say if I provide some library, I may not have this stereotype annotations on my library classes. So to utilize my library classes or to integrate my library with your application, you have to create that integration objects under this at the rate bean method. Under this at the rate bean method, you need to register your third party library objects under configuration class so that your bean will be treated as like a singleton bean. Intentionally, if somebody try to call this method also, it will not execute it to create multiple objects. Only during loading time your configuration class object will be created. Under this configuration class, if there are any at the rate bean methods, these bean methods also will be executed and only one object will be created. Okay, so all integrations will be placed under at the rate bean. All integration object will be placed under at the rate bean, like your connections or REST templates or JDBC templates or Hibernate session factories or entity managers or Kafka connection initializations, any integrations stuff that we do as part of at the rate bean. So it will executed only once, and this bean also will be registered into your container. Like how controller, service, repositories have executed, your configuration object also will be executed, and your connection object also will be created, and all will be treated as like beans. Your controller is a bean, service is a bean, DAO is a bean, configuration is a bean, and whatever you have configured inside at the red bean also is a bean for your IOC. So you can able to do any kind of setup using annotations itself. You need not to use XML file. You need not to use XML file. Just use XML file to configure your package name here and to activate your annotations. But you need not to put any extra logic under XML file. Just 2 lines of code is sufficient. Even if you go to Spring Boot, there we never use any XMLs. This component scan also will be compromised in Spring Boot. They are using at the rate Spring Boot application annotations for doing this. Okay, so in Spring Boot you never see any XML file configurations. So finally, what we avoided here means all bean tags avoided. All bean tags are avoided. Okay, so now I'll show you one example here using at the rate bean configuration. Right, one example I'll create with the connection pool. So connection pool is an integration for my application. So what I'll do, if it is my application, for your application classes, right? Controllers, you have specific stereotypes. Controller stereotypes, you have these all are your application classes, right? At the rate controller, at the rate service, at the rate repository for DAO, and for any utilities at the rate component you will be using. So when this application wanted to integrate with any third party like database or any JMS system, or if you have some queue here, I want to connect with that queue, or I have a third party application here, one more app, I want to connect with that app, you want to connect with the MQs, or you want to connect with the DB, or you want to connect with another REST API from your application, integrations will take place inside configuration class. Controller will be treated like a controller to handle view request. All your views request will be hit to controller. Controller will take it forward to service. Service will send it to repository. Now here for this repository, if it wants to talk with any database, or if the service wants to talk with any MQ, or from service if you want to call any REST APIs, these integrations objects, right? To connect with MQ, maybe MQ object you need to create. To connect with the database connection object you need to create here. Or to connect with REST API, REST templates you need to create here. Where you can able to create them inside your configuration class. Remember this, inside configuration class, we will create such objects using at the rate bean method. At the rate bean, we will use on top of a method. These all are class level annotations, stereotypes. At the rate bean is a method level annotation. We will put such methods like a public and whichever object you are returning. If it is a MQ object, MQ object is your return type. If it is a DB object, maybe data source is your return type. If it is a REST API, REST template is your return type. REST template or data source. If it is MQ, maybe some MQ connection objects. We will return whatever the integration object that is required from a method. You can put any method name. And here you can have the code to create this REST template or to create your connection or data source objects here. You can have all that code inside at the rate bean method. Here you can place it. To create connection, maybe you will be using driver manager dot get connection. You place that code here. Or for REST template rt equal to new REST template and return REST template. So all the initialization code you can put here. Create objects here and return it. That's it. Just you need to create object and return it. And to do this, you can use plain core Java logic here to create your objects. Earlier, we used to have XML file. Under XML file, when I configure a class, automatically I was to use to create object. Now, as we are avoiding it and programmatic way we choose, okay. So you can create object in whichever way you can able to create, okay. So then finally return it, return that object. Now, when this bean method executed, right, your method code will execute and whatever object you have returned, right, that object will be registered into your IOC container. And apart from this bean, what all objects will be registered? Your controller, service, repository, component, and all the configuration objects. Apart from them, at the rate bean also will be registered. All these beans will be registered. And this at the rate bean method will execute only one time. Though it is a method, right? Somebody by mistakenly, whenever they want connection object from repository, if they try to call this method intentionally also, no issues. It will not execute many times. Only one time in its lifetime it will execute. That too during deployment of your application. Okay, like how all other objects will be created, at the rate bean also will be created only once in a lifetime. Though you execute it intentionally. Intentionally, if I try to call this method also, it will not execute this code. So we are safe. It will maintain only one single object. So now, if I see example to connect with the database, right, we will use this example to understand at the rate bean behavior. Okay, let me use Eclipse. Yeah, it is loading. Yeah. Stereotype with the connection pool. We will see. I'll explain what is connection pool. So connection pool is a integration type, right? Integration we have to do for application. So here you can have your classes com dot rbu dot something ems dot web. Here you can place your controller, service for service classes, DAO or repository for repository classes. If you need any validations, you can use util package and put your component class. And configurations, you can place it under configuration package. Now first I'll start with configuration class. Class connection pool configuration or application config. All your application configurations you can place it under one configuration class. Let's say I need database connection, message queue connection, REST API connection. Okay, everything I need. So you can have multiple at the rate bean methods here. Configuration under configuration class public. I want to create connection pool. So connection pool return type is data source. Okay, create connection pool. So this is one integration that I want to do, and I want to create REST template. Create RT. So as I said, this methods will execute only one time during after AP config object, app config object creation. First this object will be created, immediately your at the rate bean methods will be executed. So you need to mention at the rate bean on top of these methods. And here create data source object. So data source is having multiple implementations for connection pool. Okay, data source given by Sun, all the rules they have given for connection pool implementation. So using this data source interface, many connection pool providers given connection pool implementations. One of it is basic data source given by Apache, new basic data source. This will create pool of connections. Here this class can able to create pool of connections for your application, so that you need not to hit every time your database whenever you need a connection for your CRUD operations. It will create connections in a pool. Set a driver Oracle driver. So using this data source, you need to set up first your driver URL, username, passwords, Oracle colon at the rate localhost colon 1521 exit, username, password, system at, oh sorry, not driver manager, right? Basic data source dot set username, password. So these properties will help basic data source to get connection. But how many connections you need during application startup? I want to bring maximum number of connections. Set max active connections. My database can give up to 19 connections. So to increase this count, there is some property, but this we cannot able to handle in production, right? Whatever size they have given for our application, that size only you have to use. DB admin if they provide, or your, you know, uh, the system engineers, or what we call the IT team, whatever number of connections given, you can use that same number of connections. And basic data source can do one more thing. Parallel, if 19 users already using your connections, it can make wait also. Set max waiting time also you can put here, so that if connection not available, the user will not be rejected. Instead, it will make him wait for next 2 seconds. So 2 into 1000 milliseconds is 2 seconds. So between, right, if any connections released between these 2 seconds, that connections will be given to next users. Let's say 19 connections I have here, but at a time 30 people if they request my application, first 19 people will get connection. The remaining 11 people will wait in the queue for next 2 seconds. Between whoever is using 19 connections, their connections will be released. Again, they will come back to pool. Again, the remaining 11 users can utilize the free connections. So that's how it will make most of DB operations success within very less time. Okay, basic data source object is created. In case of your application needed REST template, right? This integration also you can do. REST template rt equal to new REST template, return REST template. This is to call REST APIs. If you have any REST API, you can use this REST template to call. Okay, so let me put some SOP here. Executed. REST template code executed. Now just if you want to see how this object is created, and okay, default constructor I will put so that I can see your configuration object also created. Okay, now just run this. Okay, remaining classes I am not touching now. So just a configuration class I will run and see the behavior of it. Okay, so just you need a XML file to scan your packages. I'll be scanning all the packages here using component scan com.argue.ems. As I don't have classes here in these packages, it will not pick up anything, but I have only one class here, app config. This app config class will be executed. Now load this XML file and test it just to see how it is executing at the rate way. Load this XML file. run it. Your application configuration object created. Same way connection pool code also executed. Your REST template code also executed. After your config object created, this integrations code wherever you placed that at the rate bean methods also executed successfully. What I was telling you before is intentionally if somebody call these two methods, right? Also, it will not create extra objects. So that you can test here. Intentionally calling at the rate bean methods. Okay, actually you should not call. If you are aware of at the rate bean methods, you should not call. But sometimes maybe junior developers may not skilled, they may call it accidentally, and if they use it in application in many places, you need not to worry. Let them call. It will not behave differently. So I'm trying to calling that method intentionally again and again. Application config dot create connection pool. I'll execute this for next 3 times. Application config dot create the rest template. This one also I'll access 3 more times extra. Actually, you need not to call these methods. Container executed these methods. Okay, container executed these two methods to create your bean, and it is registered this data source and REST template also with IOC container. So as soon as it registered, it is available for auto wiring also. Wherever you want to inject it, you can easily inject this object. So the dependency injection also it will take care. But here, accidentally, or to get a data source object, intentionally I called it without using auto wiring concept. Intentionally, I tried this bad approach to get my object. Same with the REST template. Still, I am calling 3 times extra this connection pool method, REST template method. Behavior not changed. Only one time your connection pool method executed during after object creation only. If you have a doubt, put debugger here and see whether it will go to till this line or not. I'm putting debugger here and here. Okay, let's run it. Let's run it in debug mode. So you can see app config object created, connection pool, yeah, connection pool SOP also executed, which means this method is still executing. Okay, I'm done with it. So your config object created, connection pool created. Now REST template. So REST template also created. Okay. So that two methods executed. Now I'm going to line number 90. Step over. Actually inside this method you have a debug pointer, right? When I resume it, it should go inside that method and executed the logic. But it doesn't perform that. See your code execution completed. Means it is not going even inside here. Because it is registered already that proxy what it is doing, Spring doing what, it is not calling this method. Instead already it is having object, right? That object only straight away it is written. Or you may do one more check also here. Data source 1 is equal to data source 2. Data source 3 is equal to data source 2. So all these objects are same. Rest template 1 is equal to rest template 2, and the rest template 2 is equal to rest template 3. You can see true, 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 which means there is only one object, not many, though intentionally you call it also. Now, earlier you people were asking, right, what is the difference if I go with instead of configuration, the other stereotype annotations, component or controller or service, inside different, annotations we have, right? There, if I configure this at the rate bean methods, will it change behavior? Run and see. Your connection pool method executed multiple times. REST template method also executed multiple times. And it is saying all your objects are not singleton. False, false, false. The entire behavior of your configuration got changed. So by mistakenly also don't put component annotation or at the rate service annotation or at the rate repository annotation on top of your configuration class. Okay. So always your configuration class should have annotation called at the rate configuration only. Or else in Spring Boot you have one more facility at the rate Spring Boot application. Okay. Now you don't have this annotation here in Spring Boot you can. So is there any equivalent annotation if you have means that is Spring Boot application class. You can see it in Spring Boot. Okay. So if you put your at the rate bean annotations inside configuration or inside Spring Boot application, they are safe. If not, their behavior is like a normal method only. You need not to specify at the rate bean. They will behave like a normal prototype beans. Okay. So either configuration or Spring Boot application. Okay, we can use for at the rate beans. Spring Boot application by default is a configuration class. Okay. Any doubts so far? No, right? Am I out? REST template is for calling other application. In microservices, we will see one application to another application. I have one Java application in my machine and one more application there in your machine. Okay, consider my laptop is here, your laptop is with you. If I want to call the methods of your application, okay, you can call your application is one API, my application is another API. My Java code can call your code which is built in Java or .NET or PHP. If it is API, REST API, right? I can make a call from here, from my app to your app via REST template. REST template is a class which helps you to call REST methods. Your API, if it is implemented post method or get method, I can make a call to your app, your application URL I can pass here to hit your app. Okay, we will see that. We will see that discussions in microservices. Yeah. Hmm. Yes. If you use remaining annotations, your bean is not a bean. Your bean is like a simple method only. Okay, it is treating it like a simple method. How it is looking like for you? Method only, right? Public, some return type and a method name and some code. Finally, it is returning it. It's a simple method. When you specify at the rate bean, then it will become like a bean. How you used bean tag in your XML file. So whichever beans we configured using bean tag in XML file, how many objects creating? Only one object, right? The same behavior it should show here. When it will show the same behavior if you use at the rate bean with at the rate configuration combination or Spring Boot application combination. Apart from this two, if you see any other stereotype annotation mentioned, the behavior completely it will change. Okay. Blindly remember, at the rate bean should be there in configuration only. If anybody asks the problem, show this example, this kind of example. Just create two methods with simple SOPs and try call it intentionally. Then they will see the difference. Okay? No, no, not a class level annotation. It's a method level annotation. That too for your configuration objects. Compulsory at the rate bean method should have a return type here. Okay? Whichever object you wanted to create. So this object will be registered into IOC. Where you should create that object here only. Use simple core logic or a programmatic way of coding here to create this object and finally return it. Basic data source is a child class for data source, so I can able to return it into this object. So I can utilize this data source for my CRUD operations. I can utilize it for my CRUD operations. Let's see, I'll write a simple repo class here. Student.davo. I'll write a simple save method here. I'll make it as a repository. Public void save int id string name string email. I will insert them. Already we have table, right? Oracle Apex. Student 740. We have this table already. Okay. In this table, I have name, ID, name, email. Okay. I will do insert into this table. So how do you get connection here? Already connection is prepared here as a data source. So you just auto wire it. Wherever you need that object, right? Just you need to auto wire it. Any object which is registered into your container can be your controller, service, repository, component, or at the rate bean or your configuration class also. Anything you can auto wire here. So I need data source which is coming from at the rate bean. You can auto wire it. Then how do you get connection? Just call get connection. When you call this, it will give you one connection from connection pool. Okay, let me explain about connection pool also. Connection pool will execute only during your application startup, which means let's say here I have thousands of customers hitting my application on daily basis. So while they are hitting, if my app for each user, if we try to, he wanted to save some information for every user request, if it hit database, right? Open connection or to close connection, it will take a lot of time to do these two operations. Open and close connections are costly operations. So after open and close, he may do CRUD operation here. Anything can save or update or retrieve data between open and close. CRUD operation, as usual, it will take time, maybe in milliseconds. But to open and to close connection, database will respond very slow to get connection and to close the connection. At a time from here, if they hit your Java application, consider your database is having 10 connections, 10 maximum sessions only it is having. Here if my users count is 100 users, they wake up on 7:30 in the morning and they started hitting it, your Java application. So to open 100 connections, if it call open connection, driver manager dot get connection method, right? 100 times if it is executed, what will happen? As you have 10 connections only, for first 10 users it will supply connections. For the remaining 90 users, it will throw exception. Okay, out of 100, 10 will success. 10 will success. Remaining 90 will get exception. They will get exception by saying Oracle is unable to open sockets for you because already the 10 people is occupied. Then again, this 90 people don't know when they should go back, and this is very bad design also. Instead of direct driver manager code here, driver manager dot get connection code. If you get connections using data source connection pools will be executed only one time. Okay, only one time during your application startup. So instead of putting 10 connections here, if you can get all that 10 connections during your application deployment time only, all connections will be loaded into your JVM only. They will be available in your JVM. 10 connections or 20 connections, whatever number. So they will be available in your JVM only. Wherever your code you are executing, in that JVM only, your connections also available. Data source is a class which holds all the connections. Data source is a class which holds all these connections. All 10 connections are reserved during application startup only. So all 10 connections all the way will bring to JVM. Now whenever you need a connection, don't use driver manager dot connection. Instead of use data source dot get connection. Instead of driver manager dot get connection, if I use data source dot get connection, what it will do? It will not hit your database to bring connection. It will not hit your database. Open connection and close connections we will not execute on database, but CRUD will execute on database only. When you call ds.get connection, it will reserve one connection for you from connection pool. Here, right? It will reserve one connection pool for that so and so user. As soon as he is done with his CRUD operation, from here after he will execute CRUD operation. Finally, he will call connection.close. When he call connection.close here, the user when he call connection.close here, again connection will be placed back into connection pool only. Again it will go to connection pool and it will be available for the next user. In this case, what will happen? Connection pool will hold 10 connections in the Java memory only. So the network traffic to open connection and to close connection will be reduced. Let's say to open connection to close connection, if it is taking 1 second or 2 seconds of time, to get the connection from your JVM only may not milliseconds, even 2 milliseconds or 1 millisecond it will take to get the connection, which means here if it is taking time to single connection 2 seconds, here it will take time for that two connections only 2 milliseconds, which means within this time you can able to open and close almost 2000 connections. So compare with this simple JDBC code, it is faster 2000 times. Okay, and CRUD operation as usual, how much time it will take for your database connection, plain connection, the same time it will take for data source connection also. Okay, because the travel time is same to send your query and execute and get the response. And the one more benefit is this 90 users, already 10 users are utilizing this connection. For the 90 users, it will not give any exceptions. This 90 users will wait in a queue. This can hold them in queue. It can make them wait in queue. That facility also it will provide it. 2 seconds waiting time if you put for the first 10 users, maybe it will take hardly 200 milliseconds or 100 milliseconds, which means once in a second, tenth time, within fraction of seconds this user's code will execute, though the connections are busy, right? Even that milliseconds also. So these people should not see any exception during that time. Okay, so data source can do what? It can make them in wait. So whenever you hit right, they will be in queue. When they call data source dot get connection, immediately this code will not return any connection. If connection not available, it will keep in a queue. It can keep them wait in a queue. So as soon as connection available, right, immediately it will return that connection to the next user. So like that, this 90 users or the next 100 users or 1000 users, they will not see any exceptions. Their request be, their request will be in a waiting. Sometimes when while you are using applications, Amazon or Flipkart or Swiggy or Zomato, your code will execute, very faster. Sometimes it may hold for extra 1 second. Maybe during busy time it will do that. Similar way here during busy time, it will keep this extra users in a waiting and the first users will be executed. As soon as their code is executed, that connections will be freed and will be supplied to the next users. So performance wise, it will show a lot of difference when you hit a direct database, for open connection to close connection. Instead, if you go with this data source based connection pool, right? Connections are available within your application only. So immediately it will fetch them and utilize and it will place it back, and it can able to hold them in queue also. Such a beautiful concept, data source concept is okay. Connection pool concept. So always rely on connection pool then direct to database connection. Writing code is it complicated means no. Simple. Put this code and use this wherever you want just by auto wiring it. So it will give you connection. Now here it started through declaration. Yeah, SQL exception. So what it is giving it to you connection only, but from where? Not from database directly. So it will give connection from connection pool now. So it will not take much time because already connection initialization is happened here. All your connections brought to your Java only. Now you will get connection within fraction of seconds. Then using this connection, you can create a statement and execute update to insert your data. Insert into better get a statement. Insert into student 740 values. Here pass the ID and the name, email. Thereafter close your statement properly. Connection also close it, which means it will place it back again into your connection. That's it. Now call the student DO method from your client class. So as you understand this application configuration, right? I'll comment it. Let's get application context dot get b, get your repository student dow. Now insert your data here. Student dow dot save. Pass ID, name, email. So what I will do, int ID is equal to 1, string name is equal to abc, email equal to abc@gmail. I'll put for loop and try to execute this for 1,000 times and see the time frame. I less than 1,000, I plus plus. So as this method will use connection pool, increment j before insert and give a name ML here. After save, put one output statement here. Success or inside for loop. How many times it went success also you print. Run it. 1,000 inserts I'm doing. See, 1,000 records went success. Very less time. without any exceptions. Seamlessly it is executed. If I see my database also here, showing me multiple records. Okay, you can see the count actually. Select this count of star. Earlier I have only one record. Now if you see the count, you will be seeing 1000 more records. 1001 records are there in the table. So the execution time, it is taking very less time. Now the same application, okay, here in app config I'll create connection also directly, but single connection only, right? If I close it, it will not available. To see the difference in the client class itself, write JDBC code. Okay, you do practice this and try to write simple JDBC code inside save method without data source. Okay, and see the difference. Okay, save with the JDBC. Here what you need to do, all that code you need to place. Driver manager dot class dot for name, article dot the JDBC dot article driver. What is this? Class dot for name. And driver manager dot get connection, URL username password. So now using direct connection I am doing it. Okay, so see the difference. For 1000 users, how much time now it will take? From 1001 onwards, I'll insert records. Save using JDBC. See what is happening. I got so many exceptions here. See, exception stack also very big, but it inserted actually. Few records inserted. Again, it got exception because connection open close also we returned there, but it is taking lot of time to do that, and the users who are there in the queue they got exceptions. 1058 only inserted, which means only extra 57 records got inserted, but I requested for 1000. Right, so it is not executing as fast as like your data source connection. Here it is taking lot of time to open and close connection, but your for loop is executing very fast, right? So it is unable to catch that speed, so you got exceptions. That is a problem with direct JDBC. Okay, hope you understand this. What I will do, I will share this example also today for your practice sake. Okay, I'll send it maybe in our group. Download and practice it. Okay, you will see the difference. From tomorrow we'll start JDBC concepts. Okay.